As I've said in a previous episode of this teaching series, you can also make use of the lessons you derive from the very teaching series. Even if you're not into agitation, if it has to do with your personal pursuit or corporate organization, in the community, in the family, and all of that, everywhere there is the existence and habitation of human being, there is always a leadership. In a clan, in a lineage, there is always a leadership provided for each generation of that very lineage. Try and look for those episodes on the very platform, Facebook, YouTube, or anywhere else. You will see them. I want you to share this broadcast. Is the consequence or consequences limited to the individual or group of people? What impact, how long, how severe is the consequences of questioning generational leadership? That is our focus today. Number one consequence is this: an extended period of suffering. That is the number one consequences. An extended period of suffering. When God has appointed a man to lead a generation, and that very leadership is questioned. In the process of the questioning, there are a lot of things that are involved. There are actions, there are misinformation, there are conspiracy, there are blackmailing, there are ill fighting. There are a lot of things that happen that culminate in the questioning of a generational leadership. And when these things I've mentioned begin to take place, it is going to slow down the pace of that very generational leadership to achieve its generational mandate, to bring about the desired result or expectation of that particular generation. And when this is done, it is going to extend the period of the suffering of that very generation. The period of their suffering will be extended. It is going to be, their sufferings are going to be elongated. If it was supposed to last for 20 years or 30 years or 10 years or 5 years, it all depends. The period is going to be extended. Because when they are being blackmailed, when a leader or a leadership is blackmailed, when a leadership is opposed, it will require extra effort and resources to convince the followers that this very leadership is credible, is authentic, is for our welfare and well-being. And the people who are questioning it are trying to undermine the credibility and the authenticity and the integrity of the very leadership. It would take a lot for the leadership to clear the air, to set the record straight. It will require a lot of manpower, resources, financially, economically, time, to help the followers understand that this is actually the leadership that is saddled with the responsibility of bringing that very generation to their desired expectation or destination. So when that is going on, it is going to extend the period of the suffering, of the lack, of the challenges of that particular generation. As we are going to see in the book of Exodus, which has been our main text in this very teaching series. Yesterday we saw Nehemiah in his own generation and the role of questioning his generational leadership by Sanballat and Tobiah. Today we are looking at the consequences. So number one consequences is that there is going to be an extended period of suffering. An extended period of suffering. As Moses went on exile, there was an extended period of suffering for the people of Israel in the land of Egypt. In Exodus chapter 2, verse 14 and 15, the Bible said that when he discovered that what he did, that Pharaoh has had and has gotten the information of what he did, what did he do? He killed an Egyptian tax master in order to deliver a Hebrew man. Upon discovering that Pharaoh is now in the know of what he did, he ran away from the land of Egypt and went to the land of the Midianites. The Bible says he sat by the well. So from the time he went on exile, which was around 1533 BC, in Exodus chapter 2 verse 15, from that very time he ran away from Egypt and went to the land of the Midianites and sat by the well, which we are going to read very much later. From that very time, to the time that he returned back to Egypt in about 1491 BC, which is Exodus chapter 4 from verse 27 to 31. It was an extended period of 40 years, 40 good years. The suffering period of the children of Israel in the land of Egypt was extended by 40 years. 40 years. So Moses, after his divinely ordained leadership was questioned, he went on exile. When he went on exile, he got married there. And from that very Exodus chapter 2 verse 15 till the time he returned again in Exodus chapter 4 27 to 31 was 40 years. When he manifested his leadership position for that generation, which I have taught in the previous episodes, Exodus chapter 2 from verse 1 to 13, that was when he manifested it. He was 40 years of age. He ran away from Egypt to the land of the Midianites and came back again to Egypt 40 years. So altogether 80 years. A liberation process or activities or agitation that was supposed to last and achieve its desired result for 40 years was now extended by extra 40 years. So Moses left Egypt 40 years of age. He now went back to Egypt, now 80 years of age. And I want you to remember that we are not dealing with such wicked and cruel imposed generational leadership. I've clarified that in the previous episodes. We are talking about divinely ordained, God's own ordained and approved generational leadership. And that is why we are using very important and the right case study in the Bible. So we are not talking about all this political motivated leadership, all this other leadership based on tribalism, leadership based on different kind of motives. We are looking at purely the one that has to do with God, because that is exactly where the Biafran people are. They are the people of God. The Bible says in Exodus chapter 2 verse 14, the Hebrew man asked Moses, who made you a leader? Who made you a judge? Who made you a prince over us? To question my dispute with my fellow Hebrew, or to question our fight, or to question our dispute, our quarreling. Who made you? Who appointed you to be our prince and our judge? That question is directed at a generational leadership, not just at Moses as an individual, but as a generational leader. And he didn't know that before him was their generational leader, who was saddled with the responsibility of delivering them from the pain and the slavery and the bondage of Egypt. That very question was very, very remarkable, because it was a question against a generational leadership that God instituted. God appointed and ordained Moses for that purpose. He was born for that very purpose. I have dealt with that in the previous episodes. Please, after this broadcast, try and lay hold on them. And he went on to say, oh, you want to kill me the way you killed the Egyptian? You want to kill me the way you killed the Egyptian, which was in the verse 10 of Exodus chapter 2. And the Bible made us understand that when Moses now discovered that the information of his liberation action has circulated, either by that very Hebrew man he delivered, who may have confided in this particular Hebrew man that is questioning him now, or it has been widely publicized, just like in the case of Nnamdi Kanu. They leaked a lot of his information, a lot of his secret plans to make sure that the people of Biafra are liberated. They gave out the information to the government. They betrayed him. They gave out his location in Kenya. They betrayed him. All his plans, they sabotaged all of them. The plan of Moses was sabotaged. He then discovered that, oh, what I've done that is a secret has now come to the public knowledge. And Pharaoh had it and threatened to kill Moses. The Bible said that when Pharaoh had it, in the verse 15, he threatened to kill Moses, to get him arrested and killed, because he had no such right to lay a finger on an Egyptian, more especially on behalf of the slaves of the Egyptians, who have no right to any self-benefit or self-right or human right protection or defense. Pharaoh threatened to kill Moses, knowing that Moses was raised in his palace. and to carry out such action to undermine his position as the Pharaoh, it wasn't a little crime. It wasn't a very simple crime according to the law. So Pharaoh threatened to kill Moses, and when Moses heard about it, Moses decided to run away. He went on exile, just like Nnamdi Kanu went on exile, even though that was not the definition of it. Following the Operation Python Dance 2 in 2017, between the 10th and the 14th of September 2017, we saw when he appeared in Israel, and he never came back again until he traveled to Kenya. The government trailed him there, following the sabotage and his location that was divulged or sold out to the government, and they abducted him and brought him back to Nigeria. So as Moses ran away from Egypt in the verse 15 of Exodus chapter 2 and went to the land of Midian on exile, the suffering period of the Israelites were extended by extra 40 years. So whatever that happens to Nnamdi Kanu, whatever event, whatever incident that takes him out of action, that takes him out of the scene, that keeps him behind bars, that takes him out of the active leadership of IPOB, leading them to freedom, physically, not communicating from the prison, such incident, such action or circumstance is not for the best interest of the people of Biafra. For the period that Moses was in the land of the Midianites, there was no liberation activity going on. God did not raise any other leader to replace him. God waited. All the activities for the liberation of the people of Israel, they were all put on hold until when God sent back Moses to the land of Egypt to continue from where he stopped. And lo and behold, it was 40 years. The Israeli who was questioning the leadership of Moses, he didn't even fare any better. It wasn't funny for him and his family. He has scared away the generational leader, and there was no other leader to replace him, because God doesn't raise two leaders at the same time to lead a particular generation. So all the while that Moses was in the land of the Midianites, and all the while that Nnamdi Kanu has been out of sight, out of scene, the suffering period of the people of Biafra has been extended, and there's nobody that can explain it away. Nobody can dispute the fact. Anybody that is trying so hard to say, oh, even if he's not here, we are holding brief for him, we are taking over from him from where he stopped. Such people are trying to deceive themselves and their gullible masses or their gullible followers. The reference of this was made in the book of Acts chapter 7 verse 27. Acts chapter 7 from verse 27 to 28. That was the preaching of Stephen, making reference to how Moses went on exile, went to the land of the Midianites, and all that happened, as I've been explaining. God did not raise any other person in that very generation to lead the people of Israel. Yes, God came down to save them. God remembered his covenant with Abraham. In Genesis chapter 15 from verse 13 to 14, God told Abraham that your offspring is going to become slave in a strange land. They will become slave, and the slavery is going to last for 400 years, not 400 years, and I will deliver them. So God was conscious of that very timeline of their slavery, the expiration of the timeline, and the deliverance from their slavery. God was conscious, and God allowed Moses to be born when that very slavery timeline had expired, 400 years, and Moses was born. We saw what Pharaoh did to eliminate all the firstborn of Israel. The instruction he gave to the midwives, that when a Hebrew woman delivers and is a male child, kill the male child. That was Exodus chapter 1. The same thing happened in the time of Yeshua when he was born. Herod also gave such a genocidal instruction, that all the babies that were born, male babies that were born 2 years down, from 2 years down, they should not be killed, all in an attempt to kill Jesus Christ of Nazareth. That was exactly what Pharaoh did. But Moses escaped. We know the story. You know the story. 400 years. The expiration of the timeline arrived, and Moses was born. And that was the worst period of the slavery. Just like Nnamdi Kanu was born, 1967. That was when the civil war broke out between Biafra and Nigeria. The worst time ever, when genocide was being committed against the people of Biafra. In 1966 was the pogrom, where 100 and something thousand of the Biafran people were massacred in the Middle Belt, where they call the Middle Belt now, Plateau, Jos. So Ojukwu asked them to come back to the east. As they came back to the east, Nigeria couldn't protect them over there. He asked them to come back where they can ensure their protection, and then he declared Biafra. He didn't declare war. Gowon now declared war. The war now broke out 1967. Nnamdi Kanu was born 1967. Just like Moses was born, when the Israelites were crying for freedom to become independent. They were tired of their suffrage, their pains, and their captivity. That was when Nnamdi Kanu was born. So Moses was born at the timeline that the slavery of 400 years was supposed to expire, based on what God told Abraham in Genesis 15 from verse 13 to 16. Moses was born, and he began to act in that line to deliver them, and they began to question his generational leadership. Then he ran away. Exodus 2 verse 15. And from the time he ran away to the land of the Midianites on exile, and from that time to the time he returned again, being sent back by God, he encountered God in chapter 3. God showed him all the signs and all the wonders and asked him to go back. Now from the verse 27 to 31 of Exodus chapter 4, Moses now went back to Egypt. So between the verse 15 of Exodus chapter 2 and the verse 27 to 31 of Exodus chapter 4 was 40 good years. So their suffering period was elongated, was extended by 40 years. That is one of the consequences of questioning a generational leadership. God taught them how to never ever question a generational leadership that he ordained. We know what happened in 2023 with the Mr. P2B presidency, the Igbo presidency. We saw that the Igbo people, a good number of them, Biafrans, a good number of them who were deceived, they now decided to see Igbo presidency and the presidency of Mr. P2B as the best alternative to Nnamdi Kanu. And the whole world saw how it all ended. The end was so tragic. The end was so shambolic. All of you know it. Some people, they are very, very stubborn and they hate the truth until they meet disaster, until the worst happens. If you like, form more of the Biafran government, give it different kind of name. They have Biafran government in exile now. You can form more, okay? You can form different kind of parallel leadership against Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. You are just deceiving yourself and your gullible followers. They are blind to the fact of history. They are blind to the truth, overwhelming truth of the Bible when it comes to generational leadership. Consequently, it will extend it. It doesn't matter how they may tell you they are going to declare Biafra in November. I think I heard it was October. They now moved it to December or November. I don't know. Whatever time they are telling you they are going to declare Biafra, which is to undermine, or with a wicked intention to undermine the generational leadership of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. They are wasting their time. All the money you are contributing for such declarations, you are wasting your funds. You are wasting your resources. I will tell you the truth, even if it may not be comfortable, even if you may say, oh, how do you know? I will tell you the truth. And with time, the truth shall prevail. As we speak right now, the Igbo people and the Biafran people, they are in an extended period of their sufferings and marginalization in Nigeria because of questioning and trying to undermine the very divinely ordained generational leadership of Nnamdi Kanu. That is the truth. Except you don't know how distance works. But by the grace of God, we have done our studies. We have seen the examples. So whoever that is promising you, look at all the time they've been promising you different kind of promises. that will help the Igbo people to realize their long-term dream of ruling Nigeria, of leading Nigeria, of becoming the president of Nigeria. Some of you say, oh, it is through the Senate. Oh, let us be there in the Senate. Oh, through the House of Rem. Oh, through the political party. Let us cross carpet and join APC. Oh, let us form ABGA. Oh, let us join PDP. Oh, you have been making a lot of error. Following different kind of misleading information and political ideas or ideologies that is aimed at helping you to secure, to achieve and fulfill without your long-term dream of leading Nigeria. Till today, you have not been able to realize it. I want to shock you with this very question. If a single question of one Israeli, one question he asked Moses, made Moses to go on exile, which brought about the extended period of the suffering that lasted for 40 years. What about thousands of saboteurs and betrayers? What about thousands of saboteurs and betrayers who are not only questioning the generational leadership of Nnamdi Kanu, but are also sabotaging and betraying him? Thousands of them. One Israeli man questioned Moses, and that took him to exile. And their suffering period was extended by 40 extra years. What about thousands who are fighting against Nnamdi Kanu, who are questioning and trying to undermine his generational leadership? So this is the consequences of questioning a generational leadership that God has given to us. That Biafra has not been restored till now is because of questioning generational leadership. That is why till today it seems that it is something that is only happening on air, that is not going to be realized, or it's not possible. It is possible. But why this period is extended, that our people are still crying for freedom, is because of questioning generational leadership. So the sooner you stop it, the sooner Biafra restoration. The more you continue to question the generational leadership of Nnamdi Kanu, the more you try to reject it, the more you try to undermine it, the more you try to sabotage his release from the DSS dungeon in Abuja, Nigeria, the more you try to play politics with his incarceration, the more you are extending the period of the marginalization of the Biafran people. The more you are extending the period, the more you are creating space for additional years of the suffering of the people. If you like, reject the truth I'm teaching, but only the truth will set you free. John chapter 8 verse 32. Only the truth. It is not propaganda. It is not media. It is not by whatever, anything you think that you have at your beck and call to, maneuver your way, try to deceive the people, to make your money, to achieve whatever target you have. You are going to come under a severe curse, because you are helping the enemy to continuously hold the people down against the will of God for the people. The Bible says in verse 16 that the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to fetch water to fill their troughs in order to feed or to water their father's flock. They saw Moses sitting by the well, and some people came in the bush to fight them, to assault them. Moses stood up and helped and fought against those people. The same thing he did, the same leadership instinct he manifested in the chapter 2 verse 10. He manifested it in the bush, and he was able to overpower those assailants and deliver these young ladies, and they were able to water their father's flock. Eventually they took him to the house and introduced them to their father. Do you know their father happened to be one of the grandchildren or one of the offspring of Abraham, as we are going to read, an offspring of Midian. Midian happened to be one of the sons of Keturah that was born to Abraham after the death of Sarah. Midian. So Midian was able to raise his children in the ways of the Lord, following the footsteps of his progenitor Abraham. Let me bring to the screen immediately Exodus chapter 2 verse 16. Help more people to know the truth. Help more people to understand the truth. The consequences of questioning generational leadership. Look at verse 14. The man said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us?" Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian? Then Moses was afraid and thought, what I did must have become known. Verse 15, when Pharaoh heard this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. Verse 16, now a priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. Some shepherds came along and drove them away, but Moses got up and came to their rescue and watered their flock. The same thing he did in Egypt. Verse 18, when the girls returned to Reuel, their father, he asked them, why have you returned so early today? They answered, an Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock. They didn't know that Moses was not an Egyptian, but because he was raised in Egypt, he dressed like them, so they mistook him for an Egyptian. Verse 20, and where is he? Reuel asked his daughters, why did you leave him? Invite him to have something to eat. 21, Moses agreed to stay with the man who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, I have become a foreigner in a foreign land. Have you seen that? So that was how Moses went into the land of Midian on exile. He got married there. He had sons there. He lived there for 40 years, as I've explained. And do you know, Midian was on the southern part of Arabia, in the desert of the Saracens, and on the east of the Red Sea. Sometimes it was called Cush or Ethiopia. Moses' wife was called an Ethiopian woman in Numbers chapter 12 verse 1. Midian, as I said minutes ago, was one of the sons of Abraham, born by Keturah. Keturah came from Ethiopia in Africa. That was after the death of Sarah. Abraham died in around 1822 BC, according to Genesis chapter 25 from verse 2 to 6. But before his death, as we are going to read very soon, he sent other children he got through Keturah and other concubines. He sent them away from Isaac, because Isaac is the covenant child that was supposed to become his heir, or that has already become his heir. So what happened? Keturah then took all his children, including Midian, and they came back to Ethiopia in Africa. Some of you must have heard about the story of the Queen of Sheba. Sheba happened to be one of the sons of Keturah, the Queen of Sheba that went to see, the wisdom of Solomon. So the Queen of Sheba didn't just go to Israel because of her curiosity to know the wisdom of Solomon. It is blood. She went to her ancestral home. So this Keturah came back to Ethiopia in Africa with her children. One of them, Midian, who later became very, very significant and famous by raising his own children. And his own children later became teachers. They were more of teachers of righteousness and priests. Some people used to think that this priest of Midian was a juju priest, was a hidden priest. No, he was not a hidden priest. He was a priest of righteousness, raised by his father Midian. Midian, one of the sons of Abraham. You remember what God said in the book of Genesis chapter 18? That Abraham is going to raise his children, and they are going to follow his footsteps and keep the commandments of God. Chapter 15, chapter 18, then before the execution of the land of Sodom and Gomorrah, even before Isaac was born. So Abraham really trained them in that way that God foresaw before Isaac was born. And this Midian continued in that very footstep of Abraham. Even though they were no longer in Israel, they have now come back with their mother to Ethiopia in Africa. But the value and the spirituality that Abraham inculcated in them was still there. That he now decided to raise his own children in the ways of God, to become the teachers of righteousness and priests of the Most High God. So they also served and they offered sacrifices to the God of Abraham, being the God of the progenitor. One of the sons of Midian is known as the priest of Midian, which is Jethro, the man that we read about, the 7 daughters right now, who later welcomed Moses into his home and gave Zipporah, one of his daughters, to him to marry. Jethro, he was a priest of Midian, a priest of righteousness. He is now the grandchild or the offspring of Abraham. He later became the father-in-law of Moses. And do you know that after the Israelites came out of Egypt, Jethro offered sacrifices to God, because by this time there was no priest. Israel have not raised priests, even though the tribe of Levi were there, but the office of the priesthood has not been instituted. So Jethro has already become a priest. So he took it upon himself to offer sacrifices to God, and he gave Moses a leadership or an administrative idea that helped Moses to succeed in his ministry around 1491 BC. According to Exodus chapter, I think that is chapter 18 from verse 1 to 27. You will see it there, when the people filed in a single line, waiting for Moses to deliver judgment. And they will be in a single line from morning till evening. Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, the grandchild and the offspring of Abraham, asked Moses, what are you doing with the people? Why are they queuing from morning till evening? Moses said, oh, I am delivering judgment. I am looking into their cases. They come to me and I minister to them. Jethro said, no. If you continue like this, you are going to wear yourself out. You need helpers. You are going to weary the people and wear yourself out. So you have to break it. Let there be division of labor. That is not the teaching for today. So I'm trying to help you understand that was where Moses fled to on exile. And by the grace of God, according to divine providence, he went to the right place. And he spent 40 good years, 40, in the house of this man. This man became his mentor, a good father-in-law. And within that period of 40 years, the suffering of the people of Israel were extended. And you heard what David said in the book of Psalm chapter 81 from verse 13 to 16. Oh, that my people had hearkened to me. Oh, that Israel should have submitted himself unto God. And if they had submitted to the divine leadership, the generational leadership that God provided for them from generation to generation, that God would have made the haters of Israel to submit themselves, and that God would have allowed them to endure forever, and that God would have fed them with the finest of the wheat and with honey that came from the rock, and he would have satisfied them long ago. That is one of the consequences of questioning generational leadership that God endorsed. The second consequence is this: divine indignation and judgment. Divine indignation